Welcome back to the Whatnauts review show number 240. My name is Kyle Springer and I am joined by Melissa Wilkinson. Melissa, how are you?
Hello. I'm doing fine. How's your weekend, Kyle?
Weekend has been pretty good. Can't complain. Just hanging out. Not much going on, but it's good, you know? It's good indeed. What have you been up to?
I went to see Knock at the Cabin, the new M. Night Shyamalan film.
How was it?
I enjoyed it. I always feel like I have to qualify when I go see one of his films that it's good, but like don't go in expecting another Sixth Sense, because I feel like people they judge everything against that movie. And I'm like, it's good. Yeah. Don't go in expecting a 10 out of 10, but it's good. Go see it. Please don't be underwhelmed by this.
He's doing other interesting things. I actually saw quite a bit of people defending him as a filmmaker as this was coming out, which is like, I think the first time that I've seen that in a long time of like, yeah, guys, this will be good.
It is always worth your time. At the very least, I think he's technically very strong, and I love how all his movies are shot. Like, he's very good with a camera.
Fair enough. But we are not here to talk about M. Night Shyamalan or Knock at the Cabin. This week we are covering some comics, some Red Sonja comics by Gail Simone. It's been my goal here on the podcast to get more sword and sorcery stuff this year. And this is our first attempt at that. It's a genre I don't really know much about, but in my head, when I think of that, I immediately go to Conan the Barbarian.
Yes.
Kind of only because I don't really know what else is out there. And I've heard of Red Sonja. I know that people really enjoyed Gail Simone's run on this, but that was kind of all I knew. So especially it being a genre that we haven't really gotten into here on the review show, I was like, you know what, let's do some sword and sorcery stuff. So Melissa, of the things that I had pitched last week, you picked Red Sonja. What about Red Sonja inspired you to pick this one?
It was just a nice format. Like, you pitched this 2 weeks ago. You know, when we do our monthly into the month specials, ongoing specials, we do our pitches for the week after that, the week before. So you gave me like 18 issues of comics. I'm like, that's a great use of 2 weeks. You know, that feels more efficient than spending 2 weeks to watch one movie or two. I knew the name Gail Simone. When you said it, like a little flag popped up in my head, but I realized I don't know what that flag is. It's just, it doesn't give me a specific title. It just says, this is a name you know. This is a comic name you've heard before. Like, I'd better get more familiar with whoever Gail Simone is.
Yeah. She's a fantastic writer. She's online on Twitter a lot, just trolling the hell out of people. It's really funny to see some of the stuff that she does online. But she's written a ton of characters, from like here Red Sonja to Deadpool. She's written a bunch of her own indie stuff. She's a pretty well-known comic book writer. But Red Sonja, I have to say, I ended up enjoying my time with this series. Though it didn't start out that way. I did think the first volume and 2 volumes, there's only 3 volumes in this thing. So for a large chunk of this, I thought it was okay. I thought it was fairly generic. But there were certain things that those first 2 volumes set up, despite me maybe not being as into them, that I think really paid off in this 3rd volume here. And I think by the end of these 18 issues that we read, I enjoyed it. I knew nothing about Red Sonja going in. I didn't feel lost writing this. That was one of my concerns, is that this is technically like it's a new writer coming on the book, so they want to do their own thing, but it's also after all the events that happened before it, so I don't know how much it'll be tied into continuity and stuff like that. But I felt this was very accessible. I felt like I could jump right in. So I think if you're interested in checking the character out, this might be a good place to start.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah. What did you think now that you've read these 18 issues?
I did have a pretty good time. I really clocked in on that second volume. I really liked that
Sure.
story arc. I thought that was interesting, where she's been tasked by a dying king to bring him the 6 greatest artisans in the land in specific crafts, because he wants them to perform at his like death party. He's like, before I die, I want to see like the world's greatest swordsman, the world's greatest dancer. Red Sonja, go and collect them. And if you do this, I will free my 1,000 slaves. So that's her goal. That's her impetus. I like that it isn't specifically combat based. It's
Sure.
kind of a fetch quest, but that's really not what I was expecting. And I liked the novelty of that. I liked how, you know, even though the lives of these 1,000 people hang in the balance, on the immediate scale, it's just like, can I convince this person to go with me? I kind of liked how relatively low stakes that was.
Sure. Yeah. And that is one of the things that I think really paid off in the third volume.
Yeah.
Just some quick synopses of these 3 volumes here, if you are interested. In the first volume, there is a plague that is happening in the land, and there is a certain town that kind of wants Red Sonja to help defend it. And they know that an army is coming to kind of wipe them out because they're starting to get sick and the plague is starting to show up here. And if they can get Red Sonja to defend it, they think, hey, maybe we can live long enough to find a cure or just deal with our sickness here. We don't all need to die and suffer just because of this one thing. But as it turns out, the person that is leading the army that is coming against this town is someone that Red Sonja knows and has got to know fairly recently, to the point where they were calling each other sisters. But then they ended up going their own way, and they hadn't seen each other for a while. And so it is this like, well, I don't want to fight you. Like, you're someone I love, but why are you doing this? I need to defend these people. So that's what's happening in volume 1. And then in volume 2, like you already described, there is this king that sends Red Sonja on a fetch quest to get him the best entertainment in the world before he dies. And in return says, yes, I will free my thousands of slaves if you do this for me. And then in the third and final volume that we read, Red Sonja is again kind of on her own, and she is dying. There's multiple stories in this one. At one point, she's dying. She gets to meet death and fight death. A couple stories after that, she is asked to defend this library. These like nuns have like all of these books with all this knowledge about how we can avoid war and different political systems and disease and all sorts of stuff. And she is asked to defend that tower from a corrupt queen. I guess a little bit before that, I mentioned she was dying. She's kind of dying because of a curse that she got from this weird wizard that's out there. There's some weird things happening in that third volume, but I liked it a lot.
She is specifically cursed to never be able to forgive anybody. She kills a wizard, and that is his dying curse on her. And it takes her a while to understand exactly what that means, death sentence that is for her.
Absolutely. So yeah, did you want to add anything else into that plot synopsis? I guess the one thing I missed in that third volume there is, she ends up seeing the one person that got away
Yeah.
from all of the people that destroyed her village and killed her parents when she was a child. He's the one guy that survived that. And she's just like, I need to kill you. So yeah. Do you have anything else that you want to add into that?
No. I think these are fun, classic adventure tales. Some of them are a bit more traditional than the others. Some have got, some are darker, some are very combat based, some are a little bit more comedic. Like, I just have to go collect the world's greatest dancer.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah. Cool. Good stuff. Yeah, I ended up enjoying these, and like I said, these are a pretty accessible start if you are interested in checking out this character.
I liked her a lot. I liked her as a character. I want to say that. I enjoyed the time I spent with Red Sonja. She's always hungover and horny. I like how
surly,
basic her needs and motivations are, and how she's really aware of that. Like, one of the characters she has to go collect is the world's greatest chef, and he's trying to feed her all this incredible food, and she's like, I just want meat. Just regular old meat, please. I don't care what it is. Meat. She just wants like food and sleep and meat, sex and just beer. Like, she has no taste for fine things. When she's asked to defend that library, she's like, I never even learned how to read. I don't care about your books.
Yeah.
Like, she's got this very simple set of needs and the simple sort of code she lives by. And I liked that she was very aware of her skill as a warrior. She's like, I'm called Red Sonja the Devil for a reason. I am the toughest warrior around here. But she's not really arrogant. Like, she's very respectful and civil, and like makes bargains with like these townspeople she encounters. She does have some heart to her. She does try and see the best in people in some regards. She recognizes, I'm the greatest warrior in the world. Everybody I've struck down deserve to be struck down. I am kind of aware in the back of my mind how many widows and orphans I have created. And I do recognize that, like, when death comes for me, it will be a well-earned death, but not right now.
Indeed. With that, we will take a quick break for housekeeping. And then when we get back, we will dive into these comics a little more in depth here. So we will be right back. Here at the Whatnauts, we make multiple different shows, and a lot of hard work goes into making them, so we would love it if you check them all out. If you enjoy our shows, patreon.com/thewhatnauts is the best place to show your support. For just $1 a month, you can get early access to episodes, and at our $3 tier, a Patreon-exclusive podcast, The Pilots Club. You can even get a shout-out and thank you on most of our shows at the $5 tier. And if you're one of our patrons already, thank you so much. It means the world to us. You can find out more information on our website, thewhatnauts.com, as well as your favorite podcasting platform of choice. When you type in The Whatnauts, all of our shows will pop up right there. Just don't forget to give us a nice rating and review if you like the shows. You can also find us on YouTube and Twitch for video versions of the shows, trailer reactions, and live streams. And lastly, we have merch. If you want to grab yourself a shirt or a hoodie or a mug or something else, head over to thewhatnauts.com/store to pick up some merch today. And so we are back. Big shout out once again to all of our Patreon supporters. We love you. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
If you are a Patreon supporter, you will have access to our Patreon exclusive podcast at the $3 tier. And this month, we're already in February. I keep forgetting. This month for the Pilots Club, we talked about Puchinsky, the premiere cop reincarnated as a dog television show that never actually made it to be a television show. We had a blast with this one. I loved it a lot. By the time this goes up to the public, it will be up and ready for you all. I should have that up today, the day that we are recording this. But yeah, go check out the Pilots Club. It's a lot of fun. cool things that we've been up to here at the Whatnauts. Besides all of that, here on the review show this past week, we talked about the first 3 Fast and the Furious movies. That's our end of the month coverage for the next couple months. We're doing the next 3 here at the end of February, and then the next 3 at the end of March, all in preparation for Fast 10. Cannot wait to go see all of that. So if you're a fan of Fast and the Furious, go check those ones out too. Those will be a lot of fun. And I had only ever seen the first 3, so from here on out, it's all brand new territory. Because Melissa, you haven't seen them either.
Not a one.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun. Of course, on the Captain's Log this past week, we got to talk about all of the exciting stuff that DC Comics is doing over there with their new movie announcements and animated shows and stuff. Who knew that us reading Frankenstein Agent of Shade here on the review show like almost a year ago-ish, if not longer.
2020.
Right, yeah. Would pay off in a big way for Creature Commandos. Yeah, we are. So that was exciting and fun stuff. And then on the Reactor Core, not only did we recently hit our 100th episode, in which we ranked all of the movies that we covered on that show on the Reactor Core specifically, not this show here. We ranked all of those movies and had a blast. And we are continuing to do our weekly coverage of The Last of Us and doing our reactions to that, which has been fantastic so far. But there you go. I think that's about it for housekeeping right now. So without further ado, let's get into spoilers. Bam, there we go. Okay.
I want to ask you, this isn't like a spoilery question. I guess I could have asked it earlier. But in your mind, what is the distinction between fantasy overall and the sword and sorcery subgenre? Last year, the subgenre you were really pushing for us to cover was kaiju, which feels pretty specific. Like, you know a kaiju when you see it. But I want to know, what says sword and sorcery to you specifically?
I think, I mean, kind of like I alluded to, when I think of sword and sorcery, I think of Conan the Barbarian. But that's also partly because I don't know exactly what this genre entails. I know that in general, I'm not a huge fan of fantasy stuff, like Lord of the Rings style stuff. But that doesn't mean there aren't good stories out there that are in that genre. There won't be something that I like or feel like I can connect to. So yeah, like I feel like in the sword and sorcery genre, main character, at least in my mind, ends up being more of a brute-like character. Right? They maybe aren't as intelligent just because they want meat, they want food, they want sex, right? Right? Like it has that kind of atmosphere to it. I like to see them fight giant monsters, but there might be some mysticism added in there of like, oh, there's this ancient wizard in a cave in a mountain, and he cursed you to never forgive, and like there's just something. I think with that and some kind of adventure, but not the like, and you have my axe, and here's the raiding party and the orcs that will fight against, and I don't know. Like, does that kind of make sense?
I was also trying to figure this out because I also I have like a gut feeling on what is sword and sorcery versus just fantasy, but I don't know I don't know what the other fantasy subgenres are besides this one.
Right.
What I think it is that in a sword and sorcery story, look at your Red Sonja, your Conan the Barbarian, your Beastmaster, whatever. Your protagonist is one of the strongest people around. Your protagonist is never an underdog. They may meet a foe so great that it becomes the Goliath, and now they are now comparatively a David, but they're never the underdog just in their general lives. And they never are a sorcerer. It's always sword v sorcery. They're
Sure,
always
yeah.
a sword person. They're always a weapon person. It's very combat based. And specifically, like I think of hand-to-hand combat, like Lord of the Rings. A
Sure.
lot of war, a lot of big battles, huge fields full of like soldier after soldier. Whereas when I think of this, it's more like I have a sword, you have a sword, let's go at it. Blood
There's
and
a
mud.
like a survival like aspect
Yeah.
to it. Whereas,
Yes.
yeah, the like high fantasy stuff is on like a grander scale. Yeah, it is like I'll have my army go over there and kill you all. Whereas this, yeah, it's like man versus beast, and that is the story. There might be still some grand adventure, but it is still that like one man is kind of the main person, and you don't have the like Legolas by their side
Yeah.
being like, yes, I will help you too, and I'll knock out 50 of them and stuff like that, which we do almost get in these 3 volumes, right? In volume 2, she goes to collect all of these people, and they kind of become her party. Like they're just
temporarily,
there
yeah.
with them. Yeah. And
And
then
that
in
might
the
be part of
third
it.
volume, when she's passing away, they do show up, and they're like, hey, we like her, like we traveled with her, we were companions, like we fought together, like all like that stuff is still in there, but it never really focused on like, okay, and here's the party, and now they go on this big adventure and who knows what. But yeah, does that answer your question?
I think
Somewhat?
party size might be part of it. Yeah, you think of I can't name another character in Conan the Barbarian besides him. Like you don't think of these guys as having friends. I think of Xena and Gabrielle, but
Sure, yeah.
that's it. Like it's like maybe you have a companion, maybe also a pet, a steed, a mount, a cool wolf or something, but you
Yeah.
don't have a whole gang of people around you. You might collect a few and then eventually they fade away or like they go do their own thing. But like there's no permanent party that's more than like 2 people.
Sure,
Like the
yeah.
sword and sorcery hero is more of a loner. Like it's them against the world, or it's them and maybe one companion against the world. Where yeah, with fantasy, it's more like you've got an entire fellowship.
Indeed. But yeah, I mean, I guess at the end of the day, I'm still exploring this, so I don't necessarily know exactly. But yeah, I know that this genre has a rich history in comics as well, and yeah, here we are reading some Red Sonja. So let's start talking about this first volume here, this plague town, and she meets Dark Anissa, I believe was her name.
Dark Anissa.
Yeah, Anissa. Let me pull up the thing because the Amazon thing said what it was. Anisia.
I might be wrong
yeah.
then.
No, you're right. You are right.
Oh, okay.
Anisia. Yeah. Yeah. I felt this first volume was fairly generic. I wasn't really into it. So I don't know. I think it was for me partly because I just didn't know the character yet. And so I was still trying to find a foothold into this, that by time I did, most of that volume was over already. And so it was just like, well, okay, like this one was all right, I guess. But was there anything about this first volume that stood out to you?
I like that the king sent these 2 like teenage girls to be your bodyguards.
Right.
And they're like probably like the best hunters, you know, in their town, in their little village. But in that they like hunt rabbits and stuff. Like they are not the barbarian that Red Sonja is.
Right. Yeah.
They're just absolutely fawning over her. They call her like the glorious mistress, the mistress of the wonderful cleavage, like all these
Which
things.
I have to say is a great name for
Yeah.
the double entendre, right? there is the like there is the very obvious Red Sonja has been used as this like eye candy character in this like scantily. She has boob armor, right? Like that never works. But like that's just what her character is often comfortable in.
Yeah.
But then also she's cleaving people, like she's chopping them up in
I didn't
half.
even
So it's
get
like
to the second part. I was only thinking about the boobs.
Lady of the Magnificent Cleavage. I was like, that's actually brilliant. I like that.
I like that this is a world where everybody has heard of Red Sonja.
Yep.
Like she's not a hero who is encountering legends. She is a hero who is a legend and is very well aware that she is a legend. And everybody just fawns over her, especially these two girls. They're like, we've been appointed to be your bodyguards. And even though they know like that's a moot point, there's no way you were bodyguarding Red Sonja. Like she doesn't need it. They're still very proud to have been given that title.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I liked them. They were neat because yeah, she was just like, hey, like you're not hunting rabbits anymore. Like if you're gonna be with me, like you're gonna be hunting men. Like you're gonna have to kill some people, and I don't know if you guys have done that before. You don't seem like you have. And they're just like, I mean, we'll try our best. we'll do it. But I think for me, the stuff that I started to get into is when she started having, like, when she did actually catch the plague and was exiled away from all the action and was having these like fever dreams of like, is that a deer that I see, or is it just in my mind? Is it leading me somewhere? I don't know. And then she starts to like think of her family and what happened, and that was when it was like, okay, now I understand who this character is. Like what happened to her when she was younger. I felt like I know this was not necessarily meant to be an origin story, but I think that's kind of what I needed to get into the character and just understand some basics about it. So it was those last couple issues of the first volume that I was like, okay, now I have a foothold. But then because I liked the like fever dream stuff so much, the stuff about the plague and the town and the prince sending them out to go find this cure and stuff, but it turns out that he was the one that poisoned everyone and did all this. I just kind of didn't care as much about that. And then I think especially when volume 2 then just completely moves on and we don't really catch up with Nicia and what she's up to or what that town is up to after that, it was like, oh, well, that's not really important. Let's move on.
I think the first story is, I want to say generic. It just feels fairly traditional. It's got smaller differences in there. Like I like that this king, like Sonja really doesn't care for kings or royalty, but this is the king who rescued her, who like, or at least like killed this other king, killed this other army, found these prisoners in a dungeon, and she was one of those prisoners, and he freed her. He's like, I will have my people take care of you. You will be bathed. You will be clothed. We will give you a sack of gold. You know, go out. You're free now. And she's like, I owe him a debt. I like him. Not just that she owes him a debt, but she's like, I appreciate and respect this man. Like, if he calls for my help, I am going to be there. Like, I think that's a nice part of her character. I like that we got that introduction. I think that it served that value, and the fact that the next volume does kind of move on, I just took to be, again, part of the genre, part of just like I'm a traveling warrior. I go where people hire me. You know, I finished one campaign, I'm on to the next campaign.
Yeah,
but I did like the second volume a lot more.
It's not a bad first volume. I think I just kind of needed an origin story to get into it. So I think if I had been slightly more familiar with the character, and had known her backstory, I think I could have gotten into that first volume a little bit more. But yeah, second volume. Did you want to move on to that one?
Yeah, I like this one. I like the conceit. I like the like a fetch quest seems kind of simple and kind of cheap, but something about it really charmed me. I like that she's like Sonja's a very clearly defined character to herself and to other people. I like that as she goes on this journey, she keeps meeting all these surprises. Like she thinks she has met the Beast Master, but really it's his assistant, his like beaten on like 12-year-old girl he's like enslaved into his care. Like she really knows everything. She's the true Beast Master. Like she keeps getting surprised by different things. Like one of the characters she has to go collect is the Stargazer. And when you're first introduced to this list of artisans, you're like, what exactly does a stargazer do? And it's the one guy in this like medieval fantasy world who's figured out the earth is round. And Sonja's like, that's not true. That can't be true. I think you're lying, but the king told me to come get you. So I guess you're coming with me.
Yeah.
It's the Sonja, like what's written on her cover and what's inside the book is exactly the same. And this is I like that it's a story about her learning to not judge these other people by their book covers, to like look closer at all these people.
It's interesting because this one is also a very different structure, story structure than the first volume. And then what a lot of comics that we've read on this show, it's almost like a monster of the week, but it's like, let's add a new party companion of the week, right? She's sent out to go find these people, and each issue is her finding another person on this list here. That being said, that last one who's a dancer, I feel like they could have done without that one. It's a good joke. I feel like
I do like the joke, but it's worth it for the joke. The fact that this is the last person she has to collect, and the joke of this whole volume, this whole thing is like, okay, she's got a month to go collect all these people, get back and deliver them in time for the party, and then those slaves will be freed. And like as she goes on this journey, she's like so pressed for time. She's exhausted. She's like, I haven't had a good meal. This guy keeps trying to feed me this fancy food. I don't want a bisque. I just want like a big ham leg. She's like, I can't get a good night's sleep. I can't get any food. I can't get any drinks. I can't get any sex. And she's like just sleeping in like mud and stuff. So by the end of the thing, she's also so smelly. It's like a running joke that she's had like no time or like no inclination to find the time to bathe. Like she meets all these people and they're like, I don't know if I want to go with you. You're really smelly. And she's like, I'll fix it later. Come on. I have a big sword. I'm Red Sonja. I'm the devil. Come with me. So when she comes to this last guy, she's like at the end of her rope and she's like, I'm going to kill anybody in my way between me and whoever this dancer is. And I think she's expecting like some beautiful lady dancer. And instead it's just like some like Magic Mike type guy who's like, yeah, I'm excited. Come with me. Like, I'll go with you.
Hell like, yeah, let's go.
And he's like, ooh, I'm getting like swept away by Red Sonja. That's so exciting. And when they have that big final battle at the palace, when the king is like, actually, I'm going back on my word. I want all those slaves like trapped with me in my tomb so I have company in the afterlife, and they have to fight against his royal guard. Like every other member of the party she has collected serves a purpose. And then that guy was just dancing and he was so in the groove he didn't notice there was a battle happening around him. Yeah. That guy's on another plane. I like him.
Yeah. It's a great joke, but it is almost like you spent this entire issue on this guy who just doesn't do anything. You kind of really could have like been more in the battle with this. Spent that entire issue on that. But yeah, I like that each of the issues is her finding a different person, and it is also her kind of getting to know them and figure out their situation. Like you mentioned the Beastmaster person. Like it's not like the Doji actually went there to get is an asshole and like is like hateful towards all the animals, and I guess has some history with Sonja too. That like, hey, next time I saw you, I said that I would kill you. And then, like you mentioned, it's actually like the assistant, like the animals love the assistant because the assistant is nice and feeds them and pets them and plays with them and stuff like that. And so it's like, oh, you can like actually be the one to control these here. Okay, we'll get you instead. Or the whole thing with the chef, where she almost gets captured by these like swamp people who are cannibals.
I gotta talk about the swamp people.
And then they're like, oh, we're about to eat you, Red Sonja. We'll give you to our chef to prepare you, and we can eat you. And he's just like, all right, I'm about to prepare you. And they left. Okay, good. All right, I'm trapped here too. I've been feeding them turtles or whatever this is, saying it's humans. We need to get out of here.
I did like that, and I liked that the swamp people were true gourmands, and the chef was like, these are the only people who appreciate what I do. I just have to find things that aren't other humans to feed them.
I just have to make something so fancy that they can't tell it's not human.
So when she first goes to the swamp world, this couple stumbles across her camp, and their names are Scott, like S''KOT, and Klop, like K''LAP. I'm like, there's something familiar about these two. And then the next person they meet is like some guy jumps out of the trees and like Sonja stabs him, and his name is Pashir. And I'm like, oh my God, it's Paul Scheer, the podcaster. Earlier, that's Scott Aukerman and Kulop Vilaysack. These are like year-old podcasters. And the next person they meet is like the tribal leader, Hui. That's Howie. That's Howard Kramer from Who Charted.
Oh my God!
I know we've frequently encountered, or I've heard of, like, I know a lot of podcasters who also write comics, or they're friends with comic creators, and they'll fit them in there. Like there's like Invincible has like a Comedy Bang Bang reference in it at one point. I've seen like screen caps from, but I wasn't expecting to see them written in here. I was so delighted. I spent the rest of the issue like, who else is going to show up? Do I get to see like Swamp Jason Mantzoukas?
Right? Like a lot of times that's also the work of the artist, not necessarily the writer. Well, in this case, obviously, it's these characters' names, right? So I'm assuming Gail Simone is like, hey, for these characters, it's actually these people, make them look like that. But I've seen stuff in the background of comics that it's like it's the kind of funny logo, and then you like go on line. It's like, oh yeah, the artist is a big fan of Kind of Funny and stuff like that, which is neat to see stuff like that in the background. There's another comic that I like, Chew. Which is fantastic because the two main characters are based off of Sawyer and Miles in the like alternate side reality of Lost, and they have a whole bunch of like Lost references in that comic. It's great. It's fantastic.
We have to actually
read. That is always neat. Yeah.
We have to actually read Chew at some point because you've told me this. I'm aware of this, but I've never picked up an issue of Chew.
We should. That would be good for a good like end of the month special thing.
Okay. I do. It is nice to know that the podcasts I listen to get me through my workday at my desk job are the same podcasts that like a comic book artist is using to get them through their workday, drawing cool pictures of Red Sonja. They're like, I'm also going to put like the guys from How Did This Get Made and Comedy Bang Bang and Who Charted in here.
Yep, indeed. Speaking of that, I don't think we've mentioned the artist's name on these books here.
Yeah.
Let me open this up so I can make sure to get these right here. Let me go back to the very start of this thing. This one, that's the introduction. We have the stuff here. Artists, Walter Geovani, colorist Adriano Lucas, letterer Simon Boland. Most of those are all the same. Carlos Lopez also on some coloring work. Noah Salonga, I hope I said that right. Elmer Santos. They did the zero issue in volume 3. And then Marco Lesko did some coloring work in that third and final volume, as well as Vinicius Andrade. I hope I said that one right, too. And Alex Guimares. I'm terrible with names, but we should at least mention them because they did some good work in
It's a good-looking book. Yeah. We've frequently other times when we've read a couple volumes of a comic, there is like an artist switch partway through, which isn't bad. But it was kind of nice to stick with the same consistent art style through like this whole 18-issue run of comics. Except for like the zero issues, really interesting looking. There's great cover variants you get to see at the bottom at the end of these volumes that I really liked looking at. There's so much joy taken in Red Sonja as like the action hero and the pinup, and she's got the classic like chainmail bikini, and one of the artisans she has to go fetch in the second volume is like the world's greatest courtesan. They call her the Princess of Pillowing. I've never heard pillow used as a verb before. There's this beautiful lady with like the soft hair and the silk gown, and at one point she like kind of gives Sonja a makeover, and Sonja's like, I dress this way because I like it. Like, I like that Sonja has like real ownership over her scantily clad look. She's like, no, this is what I like to wear. You know, nobody makes any decisions for Red Sonja. Like, I dress like this.
So that's,
and when she puts on
go ahead.
But when she puts on like the gown and the woman she's talking to, she finds out that she's from like the next village over from where Red Sonja grew up, came from similar backgrounds and just like took a different path, like joined this house of courtesans. And Sonja has this moment of like, oh, my life could have been really different. Like not wondering, like she's kind of wondering about what could have been. Like she's really happy with her life the way it is, but there are occasionally moments where she meets like a more traditionally feminine woman, or a woman who's got more traditional like domestic life. She's like, oh, that could be me. I could be married. I could wear like a nice dress. Interesting. Huh. And she's like, I don't know what I'll do decades from now after I'm done with combat. I like my life now, but it is interesting to think about how other women live and how I might live if circumstances were different.
Yeah. Before I say what I was about to say on that, I do also want to give a shout out to the cover artist, Jenny Frizen. I love her work. I've seen her do covers for all sorts of things, and they're always fantastic. The artwork on these were great.
I love the covers. I love how often it's like Sonja's eyes are like the most intense thing on the page. It's not always like the boobs or the muscles or the sword. She's got these really intense eyes staring at you.
So that's kind of what I want to get at, is that like, I think historically, both with comics in general and then getting into Red Sonja, it's kind of been a male-dominated industry until recently. And I just like general nerd culture hasn't been very welcoming to women. And so characters like Red Sonja, it is kind of meant to be, again, this male fantasy of like, oh, here's this beautiful woman with no clothes on, and she can also do all of that stuff, and she can be my companion because she can hang with me when I go out hunting and stuff like that. But then writers like Gail Simone get on the book and take that character and take the things that she's good at and has been used for in the past and can almost turn that on their head to be like, yeah, of course she likes sex. Who doesn't like sex? She's comfortable in this outfit because who cares why? She's comfortable.
Yeah.
Like, that's what she likes. And like that is one thing about the art in this book. Like there is no like gratuitous butt shots or like stuff like that, and like art that like you can often see in comics of just like, it's the woman's butt right in frame. It's like, it's like looking right at her titties past that to someone else. But it's just like, come on, guy, like, do we really need that? But yeah, there is this like there is this ownership of like, yes, this is me, this is what I like, these are the things that I'm into, and she is often the one initiating sex in these books here. She's just like, all right, come on, I'm bored, get over here.
And at the end of the second volume, when she gets her payment from the palace after she like defeats the king and like whoever's left in charge gives her whatever her payment is, she goes back to that house of courtesans where she picked up that lady from and like drops the bag of gold and like that Mr.
Like, one of everything,
and like,
please.
One of each, please. And I love, more than any like big battle scene, the 2-page spread of just like the hall of courtesans, just all these glamorous people, these men and women, and like all these, some are shirtless, some are scantily clad, but also some are wearing like beautiful gowns. Like everybody's like at their finest, and whatever they decide like their finest is for themselves. Like I want to be covered in peacock feathers. That's what makes me feel sexy and powerful.
Sure.
Like, quite a variety, a smorgasbord. It was lovely.
Absolutely. And what's interesting to me is like, even though she owns it and is like, this is me, I'm a warrior, I can fight and kill and do all of this stuff. When she does get that makeover, she's blushing. It like in it, and I read that as this like, well, I feel slightly uncomfortable because I'm not used to it, but there is this like, but I kind of like it. I don't know how I feel about it yet because I haven't really explored it, but there is this like, I don't know. Maybe I could do this one day. I don't know. And I think just also by the fact that, like she does want to almost live this life of luxury where people are attending her and washing her. And it is also kind of more so for the sex, right? But like we know that she also likes that stuff too. So like there is this side of her that is maybe more elegant or royal or more traditionally feminine or something like that she just really doesn't get the time to explore all that much. Which is
she's like,
interesting,
I gotta go
side to her.
Camp in the woods and fight marauders. Like there's not a lot of time for, bathe me with rose petals.
Yeah. And then what I like about that too is, that whole book, right? They're all starting to be like, oh, you smell like you haven't bathed. She's like, I don't have time. I'll deal with it later, right? But then in volume 3, I think it's like the first like tavern she goes in or something. They're just like, oh, you reek of perfumes. Like you've been like, they had to like really bathe you. What in the world?
Yeah, they're like, oh, you're like, you smell like lilacs, gross.
Which like it's almost supposed to be like, that's supposed to be like a subtle smell of like, oh, she walked by and I got this whiff of flowers and lilacs and all this stuff. But that's like, oh, this is like they bathed you in perfume. Like that wasn't water you were sitting in. Like you were like, you were in some oil, something there. Which I thought was also a good joke. It was just a complete 180 on that too.
No,
and they still had the same
good.
reaction.
Get out of here. Volume 3 is a bit more of a it's 6 issues, and like there's a really solid story in the first 4 issues that has like a really good ending to that little story arc. And I wasn't really sure what the next 2 issues were going to be spent on. But I love that conflict in the first part where, she kills this wizard. In his like dying breath, he curses her. I curse you to never forgive again as long as you live. And she's like, all right, it seems like I got off kind of easy. Who cares what that means? And she like goes to this tavern. It's like the people who hired her, please go kill this local sorcerer who's screwing up our lives. And like the tavern master just like accidentally like spills some wine on the back of her cloak. He's like, oh, I'm so sorry. And she beats the pulp out of him.
Yeah.
She destroys that guy. And then everybody in the tavern who was lauding her as a hero is like, man, we need you to leave. We need you to get out of here. We don't know what we did. We don't know what's wrong. But like, you're not our hero anymore. Like he didn't deserve this. Get out of here. And like every little thing is just pissing her off. Absolutely. And she meets like one of the warriors who like killed her family. And it's like decades later.
To me is that she like, that is the thing that almost sets her off in like, or like gets her mad and upset, and then it's just that spilled drink that sets her off. But she sees this guy, and at first I thought this was maybe part of the curse of that, like she saw him but he wasn't really there, like no one else saw him or something. But that's not the case. No, the guy was actually there, but once this big fight breaks out, he's just like, all right, I don't need to be a part of this. I'm going to leave. And so he leaves, and she's like, he's getting away. I just thought that was interesting because you don't know exactly the ramifications of the curse yet. It's not like I curse you with boils, or like you can never pick up your sword again, or something. It's like you can't forgive.
Yeah.
What does that mean? How is that gonna manifest in her life here? And you don't really recognize it, because her getting into a bar fight is also something you could kind of expect from her. Right? Who knows?
It's an interesting conflict. I like that she's encountered this old warrior who, it's like decades, it's been like 20 years or whatever since that happened, and he's like, I really regret that. I was young. I was stupid. I didn't like the person I was. Now I've tried to change. And he's like, maybe I don't deserve forgiveness. Like at the end, after she beats the curse, and she does go and forgive him, because she's like, I need to do this for myself. I can't be the sort of person who never forgives anybody. That's monstrous. He's like, I don't know if I even deserve it. And she's like, well, I did this for me, not for you. Like, you gotta live with it.
Yeah.
And I love that when she's realizing, oh, now that I have this curse, it's not just that I don't forgive people, it's that every slight is like worthy of combat to me now. So like if anything's slightly off between me and somebody, like I'd want to fight them, and I'm Red Sonja, I will kill them. So to keep these townspeople safe, she plunges her hands straight into the campfire. When you see her again, she's like burned to the bone.
Down
she's like
to the
skeleton fingers poking out. It's so gruesome. She's like, this is what I had to do. I had to make myself unable to use a sword at all, to pick up a single weapon to save all of your lives. It's so gnarly.
Yeah, it really is. But yeah, like I really, really enjoyed this story. I think partly because it does wrap around to the stuff that I did like about that first volume, right? Like you get that sort of fever dream origin story about her village being killed by this one dude, and it comes back at the end here, like, oh hey, I found the guy. Like I wasn't expecting it, but I found him, and now I can confront him and deal with that. Like I didn't know I was searching for him, but I was kind of. And then yeah, she burns her hand. She gets sick. She like has to like heal and stuff, but she's dying basically, and everyone comes back to see her. The two bodyguards from volume 1 come back to pay their respects. All of the like 5 or 6 people she picked up in volume 2, the dancer, the stargazer, the cook, they all come back and pay their respects in case she doesn't make it, right? And I liked that. Like that was the like kind of nice emotional, like, okay, let's tie everything together here, that I really enjoyed about that third and final volume there. It also had something else that I really enjoyed, and I kind of wished this was more of a staple throughout the book here. I loved her conversations with death.
Yeah.
I thought that was awesome. And to have like this inner monologue, like almost like these intrusive thoughts, right? Like if that would have been something similar to how, remember when we read Tom King's The Vision, right? And there's that narrator of the book, and at first you don't really know who the narrator is, and it's not until like 2/3 of the way in that you find out who that narrator is. I kind of would have liked that she has just this whole time been having this conversation in her head with death, and in this like, I am a warrior. I am on, like, I could die at any moment. I'm familiar with her. I know who she like, we have this conversation here, but we don't actually meet her in the book until this third and final volume. I think that would be neat. Because there were like, there's obviously the times when she's fighting her, which is the like metaphorical like struggle. Like, are you gonna make it past this fever? But then once she does get better, there is still a few things that they say back and forth to one another. That was like, I really like that. That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Give me more
and
of that.
That really earned the structure of that final volume for me, where I felt like we had such a good, something that could have been such a strong end with the 4th issue in that volume. I'm like, what exactly are the next 2 issues going to be? I did like that it's Sonja still kind of talking with Death. Like, I know you're after me. I know I cheated you. And I love that when she meets Death, Death is like, no, I don't give this offer to anybody. But would you like to be one of my servants, one of my guard? Like, do you want to be one of my devils, truly?
Yeah.
And Sonja sort of like out-talks Death, like, how do you know I'm not also some sort of a god who came down here to trounce you and take your throne?
Yeah, or
like she really just
one of them. Like, how do you know?
She's like, you know who I am. Why do you presume I'm immortal? You don't know what I am. I could be anything. Right? I'm Red Sonja.
Exactly. I just haven't found out yet.
Yeah. And I like the last 2 issues where she's sort of having that conversation with Death about how you can take me, but on my terms. Like, I know it is petulant to defy Death, but I have work I have to do first. You're not getting to me before I finish that work.
What I also like about those, I'll be honest, I don't feel like I personally needed those last 2 issues with the nuns there, but one of the things I did like about that is, yes, she still has that very mature conversation with Death at the end. but then also when she's with the nun, she's also very childlike in the sense that like she's just like, look, I don't know how to read, I don't care for these books, but then
Yeah.
she's just like, will you read to me? And like she just like cuddles up with her head on one of the nun's laps and is just like,
Yeah.
tell me a story. And it like it's this
Yeah.
very vulnerable moment for her, I felt
Yeah.
like, which very much contrasts this like I'm facing death and I talked her down. Here's this mature philosophical conversation that I had to just like story time, please.
It's very matter of fact where she's like, I never could figure out how to read. Like letters never made sense to me. And my parents died before they could finish teaching me. So she's just like, I don't know how to read. If you want to share that story with me, like you have to read it to me. And it's a folk tale like of her people. It's like a book. It's like a famous children's book, like from Hirokania, like the region she's from. And she's never heard before. And she really takes to the legend of like this little girl. Yeah, I like that. I like that very rarely in fiction, especially in sort of like fantasy fiction. Like we find these characters inspiring, but within the story, those characters don't have other fictional characters they find inspiring. Like it kind of made me sad that nobody in Harry Potter has a book to read like Harry Potter, you know? Like what is the big fictional world within this fictional world? That like what novels do those characters read? And I like that the story included that Sonja hears this story and she's like, that little girl is cool. I want to be like her. I want to be like this 8-year-old who outsmarted a bear. How can I think like her in this final battle?
Yeah, that was fantastic. Yeah, I liked that third volume especially. I think even with the zero-ish issue, which had a completely different art style, was just kind of a one-off story. I liked that. I liked this like just one issue. We're gonna tell our own story about this guy who was like, "Oh, I married Red Sonja." Like she'll be like, he thought she had passed away. All of this stuff. Turns out he's making up the whole thing, right? But then ends up kind of sacrificing himself for her, and just has this real like, I mean, you were kind of an asshole, but you did the right thing at the end here.
That was an interesting story. I like how there's many like purely evil like sorcerers and kings there are in the story. There's also these more like nuanced gray people she meets, like this guy. She was like the warrior came to town and he loved her. He really looked up to her. He like tried to flirt with her once and she like completely shut him down. And then everybody in the town was like smack talking her, like, God, that lady was so rude. Why is she dressed like that? She's vulgar. She's this. And he's like, don't talk about her like that. She's a goddess. Like he has so much respect for Sonja that he invents this tale where like she was my true love. Because even within this fiction, this very self-serving fiction, it can give the townspeople a more positive view of her. He's like, I'm lying about a romance we never had, but it meant that the people would stop insulting you. And that's all I really wanted. I just wanted them to say nice things about you because I admire you so much.
And then he tried to use that to like not pay for food and wine. Like, oh, she's rich, so she'll be back, even though she's dead. But you know, one day. And
she's like, no, you do have to be punished for that. I'm not accepting that. No. And at the end of the story, she's like, I've never imagined being married to anybody. That might be kind of nice someday. I like that Red Sonja has such a clear vision of herself. Like she knows exactly who she is. Like she projects on the outside exactly who she is on the inside. She has this awareness of, I don't know everything that I am capable of doing. You know, if I'm this great warrior, maybe one day I could also be capable of loving somebody and getting married and having a home. I don't,
Hmm.
if I can do everything, maybe I can do that too
Yeah.
someday.
Yeah. Good stuff. Good stuff with
Hmm.
all of that. I don't know if I have too much else
Yeah,
to say
that's about it.
on Red Sonja. Good
I
stuff.
enjoyed it. A nice
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, indeed. Let's see. Let me pull up our bingo sheet here. Give me just a sec to get all of that ready. There we go. Pulling it up on screen in just a sec. I guess the one downside about doing
Hmm.
this on the Google thing is that it never saves like what zoom in you want. So it's
Oh,
always like
yeah.
too zoomed in and I have to zoom out. Okay, here's our bingo sheets for
Let's
right
see.
now.
I definitely
Um,
have poison.
Poison. Did we crash a fancy party? Kinda.
Not exactly. Like we see fancy parties, but I
They
think
go
like
2-1, but they didn't crash it because
yeah.
they were
Yeah, they were
invited.
invited. Yeah,
Yeah,
you can't be invited to a fancy party. You have to crash it. That is required. I mean, she adopts a
um,
kid into her party. She adopts Rat, but like she's not stuck with Rat. And like
yeah,
Rat, despite being
they
like
have
12 years old, is not
poison.
like the fact that she's a child doesn't have a lot of weight on the story. Like she doesn't behave or is really treated differently than the other party members.
Yeah. Did we have a magic book? I don't think we did.
I don't think so. I don't know if we really had a
Um,
disguise. I mean, we had people who were just like wearing a cloak that
a
covers their
hood.
face and
Yeah,
then they pull
no.
back the hood and they're like, it's me. And I don't think that's really enough. There is a sexy red dress in that like big 2-page spread of the various courtesans, but it's just like one out of the like 20 people in that panel. So I don't think it's given it like wow factor on its own to be worth me crossing that off.
Yeah, I think all I had was poison. That was it.
Poison. Secret
Almost had
royalty.
almost had begin human trials because the wizard was killing
Yeah.
the people from the town, but there was
Oh,
no like, let's start it now. It was just like, oh, he did that, but didn't get to
we
see it in this book. Oh well.
we probably saw a cow, but the cow wasn't very significant. Like a cow was probably in there, but I don't remember it.
Now, maybe in that first volume with the
Yeah.
town.
Yeah. We also a character did break into dance, but given that that was their job and their identity, I don't think that's really worth crossing off. Like the entire point of that guy is to dance. It's not a surprise that that's what he's doing.
Yeah, yeah. I think all I have
Yeah.
is poison.
Listen,
There we go. Put that back up here. Well, let's do recommendations. If
yeah.
people enjoyed this, what else might they like?
Ah, Red Sonja definitely reminded me of Xena. Xena,
Yeah, sure,
warrior
absolutely.
princess. Her with her companion / girlfriend, I think, Gabrielle. Her friend Joxer. I have very vague memories of Xena, warrior princess. And I know there's a lot of it. So I don't even know where it is. This does not seem like an easy show to rewatch. It seems like there's probably season upon season of the thing. I don't know where the app in which it lives. Can't say I've seen Xena in like 20 years. I'm just telling you, like, think about her. Just sit down and like remember Xena for a little bit. Picture Lucy Lawless's face in your mind.
Good stuff. I would throw on The Heroic Legend of Arslan, a
Okay.
manga that we read back on episode 103. Not necessarily sword and sorcery. It is more like that military fantasy stuff, but I feel like there is some similarities in there just from it being a fantasy genre. I think especially volume 2 of Red Sonja here of her like building that party out. I think that is a lot of the strategy that is happening in Arslan of just like, okay, there's this little prince who's exiled and he kind of needs to build up his allies here. We need to like strategically think about who can help us out here. So I'd say that. Of course, you know, stuff like Conan the Barbarian would be one to think about. If you guys have seen Genndy Tartakovsky's Primal, I would also put that in there too. I love that cartoon. It's
Samurai
fantastic.
Jack while we're at it. Samurai Jack, never a bad recommendation.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm still struggling to come up with stuff that is like in the genre. I think one of the things that surprised me last week when I was doing some research of like, what can I pitch? Like, what are some things I could do was me just looking up lists of like, what are the best sword and sorcery movies out there? And one that kept popping up was Jason and the Argonauts. The Greek mythology side of like, here's a character who like gets to go on some quest and has to fight some like weird wizard in a mountain or some skeleton army or some, you know, some giant monster. And I was just like, I guess, that works.
I don't know what the last great sword and sorcery movie was, because you think of that and you think of the like 80s Schwarzenegger like Lundgren stuff. I don't know if anybody's made one in the last.
There was a remake.
Watch The Northman.
Yeah, there was a more recent remake of Conan. I don't know. There is some stuff that you can do in comics that aren't necessarily sword and sorcery. I think Thor, especially Jason Aaron's run on that, the first 2 volumes of which are what they used for the more recent Thor movie with Gore the God Butcher, but that especially that early stuff that Jason Aaron was doing with that run is very sword and sorcery like. From the Valiant universe, we've read a few Valiant comics here on the show, but we have not read Eternal Warrior, who is also a sword and sorcery like character. But if you want a spin on that genre, I would also suggest Exo Manowar from Valiant, who is kind of like a mix between Thor and Iron Man, and maybe like a dash of Captain America in there too, in the sense that he was of the Visigoths right outside the Roman Empire, and then he got abducted by aliens and spent what he thought was a decade of time up there with the aliens, only to escape by donning their sacred armor, which only their prophesied savior could wear. So when he puts it on, they're all like, but you're a human, you're not our savior, like what the hell, like this is wrong here. So he becomes an enemy of them, but then he goes back to Earth, to where his people should be, only to find that he's now in modern day times. So he has this like Steve Rogers, like man out of time. Stuff. Like, I'm ancient Visigoth, I don't know how to act in the modern world, but he also has this like high-tech alien armor on. So he's kind of like Tony Stark in that sense, but he speaks like Thor. So if you want a twist on the sword and sorcery stuff, Exo Manowar, go check him out. Why not?
Okay.
So yeah, there you go. That's what I would do for recommendations.
Nice.
Melissa, it's your turn to pitch what we're doing for this next week. What do you got for me?
I have 3 audio dramas for you. We haven't done an audio drama in like a year.
Yeah.
And I just have a very full week at work. We're just in a real crunch time at work right now. So like I need an audio drama to get me through the workday. These are very personally driven picks this week.
Cool. Let's do it.
Pitch number 1. I know DC is hot right now. I don't know if this is the most timely DC thing we could cover, but pitch number 1 is Batman Unburied, the audio drama on Spotify. A serial killer known as the Harvester terrorizes Gotham City, but Batman is not coming to the rescue. In fact, Bruce Wayne has no memory of being the Caped Crusader at all. Instead, Bruce is a forensic pathologist performing the autopsy on the latest victim when he's attacked by the killer himself. As Bruce's obsession with the Harvester consumes him, Dr. Thomas Wayne, head of Gotham City Hospital, orders his son to take medical leave and seek treatment from an unusual psychologist, Dr. Hunter. With Batman missing in action, Detective Barbara Gordon is left with no other choice but to seek help from Gotham's second smartest detective, the Riddler. Batman Unburied is created by David S. Goyer and stars Winston Duke, Hassan Minhaj, and Gina Rodriguez. Yeah,
cool.
This is a take on Batman I've never heard before. I don't know if it has any basis in the comics or if it's an entirely new approach for this audio drama. But I like the idea of a Bruce Wayne who his parents lived, or his father lived at least, and he followed in his father's footsteps, and he's fighting crime from the ME perspective, kind of. Winston Duke, I'd love to hear his take on being Bruce Wayne. I think it's exciting casting. I've loved him in live action. I'd like to spend time with him as a voice actor.
Sure. Good stuff. Good stuff.
Pitch number 2. This is something I've pitched to you before. This is an audio drama called The Left-Right Game. Tessa Thompson stars as an idealistic young journalist trying to make a name for herself by following a group of paranormal explorers obsessed with a seemingly harmless pastime known as the left-right game. Basically, you start at a corner in a town, you take a left, you're driving in your car, you take a left, you take a right, take a left, take a right, and you just keep doing that forever, and eventually you will go beyond the confines of reality and go into another dimension. You're just on a road trip through this weird alternate dimension. The journey takes her into a supernatural world that she and the other members of the expedition can neither handle nor survive. I've listened to all this before. It's a really cool premise. It's a fun one. I'd love to have you hear it. I'd love the chance to talk about that one.
Sure.
And pitch number 3. You've often talked about how the very first episode of the Whatnauts podcast, you and your old co-host Paul talked about the Black Tapes podcast. Not even a comprehensive look at the first season, just like however much of the podcast was out at that point. And you're like, that episode's so embarrassing. We didn't know what we were doing back then. Don't listen to it. I thought I'd give you the opportunity. Kyle, we could talk about season 1 of the Black Tapes podcast, a personal favorite of yours and mine. You could do it again. You could have a fresh start, a new, better Black Tapes podcast episode.
We technically do have a better Black Tapes podcast out there. I think we covered the rest of like season 1 and 2 on like episode 50 of the Whatnauts podcast, like way back in the day, and then we did it again for our like anniversary of like, let's cover the entire show now. So we have better ones out there, but yeah, we haven't done it. Like you and I have not talked a bit about it. We know that we've listened to it and stuff like that, but yeah, interesting. Okay, so we got Batman Unburied, the Left-Right Game, and the Black Tapes podcast. Man, I think I'm going to go with the Left-Right Game. I think that one sounds interesting. I would like to also get some paranormal stuff here on the show. And Tessa Thompson. Why not?
Excellent. Yeah, she's very good in this. It's a really well done, like really well produced rich sound design. I feel like every new audio drama nowadays is like an immersive soundscape.
A movie for your ears.
It's one of those. But I listened to this like a year or two, like a year and a half ago. Again, in the working from home space where I need to just like be somewhere else while I'm stuck here at my desk. It's a good one. It's a good one. I look forward to listening to it again. I look forward to hearing your thoughts.
Sounds good. Yeah, the left-right game. And I'm assuming you can get that wherever podcasts are available.
Yeah, I've got it on my podcast addict. It's 10 episodes, and they're anywhere from like mid 30 minutes to like 50 something minutes.
Cool. Sounds good to me. Sounds like a good one. But yeah, I think that is almost about it for our podcast this week. Melissa, where can the people find you on the internet?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at WilkyWit. That's WILKYWIT. And listen to my other podcast, Saturday Morning Obscurities, show where me and my brother Jams talk about weird old kid shows you feel like only you remember.
There you go. If you guys would like to stay up to date with me, I am at Yo Kyle Springer. And of course, if you would like to stay up to date with all of the stuff that we do here at the Whatnauts, we are at the Whatnauts. So please go like, share, and subscribe. That would help us out a ton. Go check out one of our other videos over there on that side. If you're watching the YouTube version, that would also help us out a bunch. And yeah, this has been number 240 of the Whatnauts review show.